"Marla, you'll be sitting over there, by the service station." That's what she said to me, Callie, my ex-husband's wife, at my own son's wedding. She said it with this smile, this tight, controlled, venomous little smile, like she was offering me a gift instead of shoving me into the darkest corner of the reception hall. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the words themselves, but the fact that she said them so sweetly, so publicly, that no one else even noticed the knife going in. She pointed to a cramped chair wedged beside the clattering dishes and swinging kitchen doors, as if I were invisible at my own son's wedding. I walked toward that corner, my chest tightening with every step, but the truth I brought with me was about to sit beside me, unmasked and unstoppable. Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country, wherever you are in the world. And please hit that like button for me right now and subscribe to my channel. We're building a community of people who refuse to be silenced, who know that dignity has no expiration date. Now back to my story. My name is Marla Benton. I'm 52 years old. I've been a mother for 28 years, and for the last 6 of those years, I've watched another woman slowly replace me in every way that mattered. Her name is Callie. She's 39, blonde, polished, and speaks in that soft, calculated tone that makes everyone think she's gentle, harmless, kind. She's not. The divorce happened 6 years ago. Robinson, my ex-husband, sat me down one evening after 22 years of marriage and told me he wasn't happy anymore, that he needed something different, that our life together felt stagnant. I remember sitting there, numb, watching his mouth move and thinking, how did I not see this coming? But the truth is, I did see it. I just didn't want to believe it. 3 months later, he introduced Trent to Callie. She worked at his law firm. She was younger, sharper, and everything I wasn't, or at least everything Robinson had convinced himself I wasn't. Trent was 22 at the time, fresh out of college, still figuring out who he was. And Callie knew exactly how to be what he needed. She wasn't his mother. She was his friend, his confidant, the woman who listened without judgment, who laughed at his jokes, who made him feel seen. I was the one who had rules, expectations, the one who reminded him to call his grandmother and pay his credit card bill on time. I was the mother, and mothers, apparently, are easy to take for granted. At first, Trent was polite about it. He'd still call me on Sundays, still show up for birthdays. But over time, the calls got shorter, the visits less frequent, and Callie's name started appearing more and more in his stories. Callie thinks I should apply for that job. Callie helped me pick out a suit. Callie made this amazing dinner last weekend. I smiled through it. I told myself it was temporary, that he'd come back to me once the novelty wore off, but it didn't wear off. It deepened. Robinson and Callie got married 2 years after the divorce, and suddenly, they weren't just a couple. They were a family. A family that included my son. And I became the outsider looking in. When Trent got engaged 8 months ago, I cried. Not because I wasn't happy for him. I was. But because I knew, deep in my gut, that this wedding wouldn't be mine to share. And I was right. Callie offered to help plan the wedding. To keep the peace, she said. Trent thought it was a wonderful idea. Robinson backed her up. It'll make things easier, Marla, he said. You know how stressful weddings can be. So I stepped back. I told myself I was being mature, gracious, the bigger person. But stepping back turned into being pushed out. First, it was the guest list. I'd given Trent a list of 12 people, close friends, family members who'd known him since he was born. Callie cut it down to 4. We just don't have the space, Marla, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. You understand, don't you? Then it was the flowers. I'd suggested white roses, Trent's grandmother's favorite. Callie switched them to peonies. They photograph better, she said. Then it was the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't just left off the program. I wasn't even told about it until 2 days before. When I asked Trent why, he looked uncomfortable. Callie was handling the invitations, Hamo. he said. It must have been an oversight. An oversight. That's what he called it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him and say, "Do you not see what she's doing? Do you not see that she's erasing me?" But I didn't. Because if I said anything, I'd be the bitter ex-wife, the jealous mother, the problem. So I swallowed it. I swallowed all of it, every dismissal, every oversight, every moment of being treated like a footnote in my own son's life. Until 2 weeks before the wedding. I was sitting in my apartment, this small, quiet, one-bedroom place I moved into after the divorce, scrolling through my phone because I couldn't sleep. It was late, the kind of late where your brain starts spinning and you can't shut it off. I was thinking about the wedding, about that stupid seat by the service station, about how I was going to smile through the whole thing and pretend it didn't hurt. And then, almost by accident, I started Googling Callie. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted to understand her. Maybe I wanted to find some flaw, some crack in the perfect image she projected. Maybe I was just desperate to feel like I had some kind of power in a situation where I felt completely powerless. I typed her name into the search bar, Callie Mitchell. Pages of results came up, her LinkedIn, her Instagram, a few mentions in local news articles about charity events she'd organized. Nothing surprising, nothing useful. But then I saw something odd. It was an old newspaper article from about 15 years ago, a small piece buried in the archives of a local paper from a town I'd never heard of. The headline read, "Family Dispute Leads to Legal Battle Over Estate." I clicked on it. The article was vague, written in that dry, detached way small-town journalism tends to be. It mentioned a woman named Rowena Clark, who had filed a lawsuit against her sister over their late mother's estate. The sister's name wasn't mentioned in the article, but the last name caught my attention. Clark. That was Callie's maiden name. I kept digging. It took hours, jumping from one obscure link to another, piecing together fragments of information like a detective in a bad movie. But eventually, I found it. A legal document. Public record. It listed both names clearly, Rowena Clark and Callie Clark. Callie had a sister she'd never mentioned, a sister Trent didn't know existed, a sister who, according to the documents, had been cut out of their mother's will under suspicious circumstances. I kept reading. The more I uncovered, the darker the story became. Rowena was the older sister. She'd been her mother's primary caregiver during a long, brutal battle with cancer. The mother had left the bulk of her estate to Rowena, not because she loved her more, but because Rowena had sacrificed everything to take care of her. She'd quit her job, drained her savings, put her own life on hold. But Callie had other plans. According to the lawsuit, Callie had manipulated their mother during her final months, convinced her that Rowena was unstable, unreliable, unfit to manage the money. She'd forged documents, spread lies, and when the will was read, Callie walked away with almost everything. Rowena got nothing. Rowena fought back, but the legal battle drained what little she had left. Eventually, she dropped the case. Not because she didn't deserve justice, but because she couldn't afford to keep fighting. And Callie used that money to build her perfect life, the life that eventually led her to my ex-husband, to my son. I sat there staring at my laptop screen, my hands shaking. Callie wasn't just manipulative. She wasn't just cold. She was a thief, a liar. A woman who had destroyed her own sister and then erased her from existence like she'd never mattered at all. And no one knew. Not Robinson, not Trent, not the guests who would toast her at the wedding and call her gracious and kind. No one, except me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind was racing, spinning through 1,000 possibilities. I could tell Trent. I could show him the documents. I could expose Callie for what she really was. But would he believe me? I was the bitter ex-wife, the woman who'd been difficult during the divorce, the mother who, in his eyes, just couldn't let go. Anything I said would be dismissed, twisted, used against me. No. If I wanted the truth to come out, it couldn't come from me. It had to come from someone Callie couldn't deny. Someone whose very existence would shatter the lie she'd been living. It had to come from Rowena. Finding her wasn't easy. Rowena Clark had disappeared from public life after the lawsuit. No social media, no digital footprint. But I'm stubborn, and when you've spent years being ignored, you get good at digging for things people don't want you to find. I tracked her down through an old friend mentioned in one of the articles. It took a dozen phone calls, but eventually I got a number, then an address. A small town 3 states away. I sent her a letter, not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter, because I needed her to know I was serious. Dear Rowena, you don't know me, but I know your sister, and I know what she did to you. I'm writing because I think it's time the truth came to light. I'm not asking you to fight her. I'm not asking you to cause a scene. I'm just asking you to exist, to let people see you, to remind her, and everyone who believes in her perfect image, that she can't erase the people she's hurt. If you're willing, I'd like to invite you to a wedding. Your sister is the guest of honor. Sincerely, Marla Benton. I mailed it and waited. 3 days later, my phone rang. This is Rowena, the voice on the other end said. It was quiet, hesitant, but there was something underneath it, something sharp and wounded and ready. I'm listening, she said. And just like that, the plan was set in motion. The morning of the wedding, I stood in front of my mirror for a long time. I wore a navy blue dress, elegant, understated, the kind of thing that wouldn't draw attention but wouldn't apologize either. I did my makeup carefully, fixed my hair. I wanted to look strong, composed, because I knew what was coming. Rowena and I had agreed to meet outside the venue. When I saw her walking toward me, I felt a strange jolt of recognition. She looked so much like Callie, the same sharp cheekbones, the same green eyes. But where Callie's face was smooth and controlled, Rowena's carried the weight of everything she'd survived. She stopped in front of me and gave me a small, sad smile. Are you ready? I asked. She nodded. Are you? I wasn't sure, but I said yes anyway. We walked into the reception together, side by side, 2 women who had been erased, 2 women who refused to stay invisible. The venue was beautiful, string lights, long tables draped in white linen, a live band playing soft jazz in the corner, everything Callie had planned to perfection. And then I saw her. Callie stood near the entrance, greeting guests with that practiced smile. She looked stunning. White silk dress, hair swept into an elegant twist, the picture of grace. She saw me first. Her eyes flicked toward me with that familiar look, polite, dismissive, already planning how to manage me. And then she saw Rowena. Her face changed, not slowly, not subtly. It changed all at once, like someone had ripped the mask clean off. Her mouth opened, her eyes went wide. The champagne glass in her hand tilted, nearly spilling. Across the room, Trent turned to see what his stepmother was staring at. His eyes found me, and then they found Rowena. His face went pale. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I just walked toward the seat I'd been assigned, the one by the service station, the one meant to make me invisible, and Rowena sat down beside me. The truth had arrived. The moment Callie's eyes locked onto Rowena, I watched something I'd never seen before. I watched her break. Not the kind of breaking that makes noise, not the dramatic kind you see in movies where someone screams or throws things or falls apart in public. No. This was the kind of breaking that happens in silence, the kind where your face stays perfectly still, but your eyes betray everything. The kind where you realize, in one horrifying instant, that the past you buried is standing right in front of you, breathing, real, and impossible to deny. Her champagne glass trembled in her hand, just slightly, just enough that a few drops spilled over the rim and onto her white silk dress. She didn't even notice. She was too busy staring at her sister, the sister she'd erased, the sister she'd convinced herself was gone forever, sitting beside me in that corner by the service station, the corner she'd chosen for me, the corner meant to make me invisible. Except now, that corner was the only place in the room anyone could look. I sat down slowly, deliberately, smoothing my dress beneath me like I had all the time in the world. Rowena sat beside me, her hands folded in her lap, her posture straight and dignified. She didn't look angry. She didn't look smug. She just looked present. And sometimes, presence is the most powerful weapon you can have. Across the room, my son Trent stood frozen beside his bride, his face drained of color, his mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. He looked at me, then at Rowena, then back at Callie, who was still standing near the entrance like a statue. Her perfect smile completely gone. I could feel the room shifting. Guests were starting to notice, heads were turning, whispers were beginning to spread, like ripples in water after you've thrown a stone. Who is that woman with Marla? She looks so much like Callie. Do you think they're related? I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just sat there, hands folded, watching the show I'd orchestrated without saying a single word. Robinson, my ex-husband, was standing near the bar, talking to one of his lawyer friends. I saw the exact moment he noticed something was wrong. He followed the line of stairs, his eyes landing on me, then on Rowena. His face tightened. He excused himself from the conversation and started walking toward me. His jaw clenched in that way it always did when he was about to assert control. And this was about to get interesting. Robinson reached our table within seconds, moving through the crowd with the kind of authority he'd always carried, like the world owed him space. He stopped in front of me, blocking my view of the room, his arms crossed over his chest. "Marla," he said, his voice low and sharp. "What is this?" I looked up at him calmly. "What is what, Robinson?" "Don't play games with me." His eyes flicked to Rowena, then back to me. "Who is she? What are you doing?" I tilted my head slightly, as if genuinely confused. "I'm sitting where I was told to sit, with my guest. Is there a problem?" His nostrils flared. "You know exactly what you're doing." "Do I?" I kept my voice even, steady. "I was told I could bring a guest. I brought a guest. Her name is Rowena Clark." I paused, letting the name hang in the air between us. "Does that name sound familiar to you, Robinson?" He blinked. For just a moment, I saw confusion flash across his face. "Clark? That's Callie's maiden name," I finished. "Yes, this is Callie's sister." The confusion turned to shock. "Callie doesn't have a sister," I smiled, not cruelly, just knowingly. "That's what she told you, isn't it?" Robinson's face hardened. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, Rowena spoke. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the tension like a blade. "Hello, Robinson," she said. "I'm sure Callie's told you all about me." He stared at her, then at me, then over his shoulder at Callie, who was now being approached by several concerned-looking guests. She was trying to smile, trying to maintain composure, but I could see the cracks forming. Robinson leaned down, his voice dropping to a hiss. "If you think you're going to ruin this day for Trent—" "I'm not ruining anything," I interrupted, my tone still perfectly calm. "I'm just sitting here, with my guest. If that's a problem, maybe you should ask Callie why." For a moment he looked like he wanted to argue, but then he straightened, his face tight with barely controlled anger, and walked away. Not toward Callie, toward the bar, because Robinson had always been good at one thing, avoiding problems until they became unavoidable. I watched him go, then glanced at Rowena. "You okay?" She nodded, though her hands were trembling slightly in her lap. "I didn't think it would feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I'm the ghost at my own funeral." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're not a ghost. You're the truth. And the truth doesn't stay buried forever." Within minutes, the whispers had turned into full conversations. Guests were no longer pretending not to stare. They were openly looking at Rowena, then at Callie, then back at Rowena, trying to piece together the puzzle. One woman, an older guest I didn't recognize, probably someone from Robinson's side, approached our table hesitantly. She had that look people get when they're trying to satisfy their curiosity, without seeming rude. "Excuse me," she said, smiling at Rowena. "I don't think we've met. Are you family?" Rowena looked up at her, and for a moment, I thought she might not answer. But then she smiled, sad, tired, but genuine. "I used to be," she said quietly. The woman's smile faltered. "I'm sorry?" "I'm Callie's sister," Rowena clarified. "But we haven't spoken in over a decade." The woman's eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't know Callie had a sister." "Most people don't," Rowena said. The woman stood there for a moment, clearly unsure how to respond. Then she nodded awkwardly and walked away, immediately pulling out her phone. I knew what was happening. She was texting someone, and within minutes, everyone at this wedding would know. I glanced at Rowena. "You didn't have to tell her." "Yes, I did," Rowena said softly, "because if I don't say it, she'll just keep pretending I don't exist." And that's when I realized something. Rowena wasn't here for revenge. She wasn't here to humiliate Callie or destroy her perfect life. She was here because she needed to be seen. After years of being erased, dismissed, and lied about, she just needed someone, anyone, to acknowledge that she was real. And that somehow made this whole thing even more powerful. Trent finally moved. I saw him excuse himself from his bride and start walking toward me, his face pale and his movements stiff, like he was forcing himself forward. My heart clenched. This was my son, my boy, and I was about to shatter something he'd believed for years. He reached our table and stopped, his eyes fixed on Rowena. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Same bone structure, same eyes, same mouth. If you'd seen them together, you'd know immediately they were sisters. "Mom," Trent said, his voice tight, "can I talk to you? Alone?" I nodded and stood, following him to a quieter corner near the windows. Behind us, I could feel Rowena's eyes on my back, supportive, but worried. Trent turned to face me, and I could see the anger and confusion battling in his expression. "Who is that woman?" "Her name is Rowena Clark," I said calmly. "She's Callie's older sister." Trent shook his head. "That's not possible. Callie doesn't have a sister. She told me. She told Dad. She's an only child." "She lied." "Why would she lie about that?" I took a breath. This was it. The moment where I either stayed silent or told him the truth, and I'd stayed silent for too long already. "Because she didn't want anyone to know what she did to Rowena," he said. 15 years ago, their mother died of cancer. Rowena had been taking care of her, gave up her job, spent all her savings, put her entire life on hold. Their mother left most of her estate to Rowena because of it. But Callie couldn't accept that. Trent's face was stone. "What did she do?" "She manipulated their mother in her final months, convinced her that Rowena was unstable, forged documents. And when the will was read, Callie walked away with almost everything. Rowena tried to fight it, but she couldn't afford the legal battle. So she dropped the case, and Callie used that money to build the life she has now, the life that includes you." Trent stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. "You're lying." "I'm not." "You're making this up because you hate her." "Trent, no." His voice cracked. "You've hated her since the divorce. You've hated Dad. You've hated everything about our family since you stopped being part of it. And now you're trying to ruin my wedding because you can't stand to see us happy." His words hit me like a fist to the chest. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to shake him and tell him to wake up, but I didn't, because I knew that anger wouldn't reach him. Not yet. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said quietly. "I'm trying to show you the truth, and if you don't believe me, ask Rowena, or better yet, ask Callie." Trent's jaw tightened. He looked over my shoulder at Rowena, then back at me. "If you're wrong about this..." "I'm not." He didn't say anything else. He just turned and walked away, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding, wondering if I'd just lost my son forever. But then I saw where he was going. He was walking toward Callie. Callie was near the head table now, surrounded by a small group of guests who were clearly trying to figure out what was happening. She was smiling, that practiced, perfect smile, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She was losing control, and Callie hated losing control. Trent reached her and leaned in, whispering something I couldn't hear. Her smile vanished. She glanced at me, then at Rowena, and I saw something flicker across her face. Fear. She grabbed Trent's arm and pulled him away from the crowd, toward a side hallway that led to the bathrooms. I watched them disappear through the doorway, my pulse racing. This was it. This was the moment where everything would either collapse or explode. I walked back to the table and sat down beside Rowena, who looked at me with wide, worried eyes. "What's happening?" she asked. "The truth," I said, "whether she's ready for it or not." They were gone for 10 minutes. 10 agonizing, suspense-filled minutes, where the guests continued to whisper and stare and speculate. Robinson downed 2 more drinks at the bar. The bride looked increasingly uncomfortable, glancing toward the hallway, where her new husband had disappeared with his stepmother. And me? I sat there, hands folded, heart pounding, praying that my son would finally see what I'd seen all along. When they finally emerged, Trent's face was ashen. Callie's was red, blotchy, like she'd been crying, or yelling, probably both. Trent walked directly to the microphone stand near the band. He didn't look at Callie. He didn't look at Robinson. He didn't look at anyone except me. And then he picked up the microphone. The room went silent. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. "I know this is supposed to be a celebration, and it is. But there's something I need to say." I stopped breathing. "There's someone here tonight who shouldn't be a stranger to any of us," Trent continued, his eyes finding Rowena. "Someone who was erased when she should have been remembered. Her name is Rowena Clark, and she's my stepmother's sister." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Callie's face went white. Robinson set his drink down hard on the bar. Trent's voice grew stronger. "I didn't know she existed until today. None of us did. Because Callie lied. She lied about her family. She lied about her past. And she lied about the person she hurt the most." He turned to look directly at Callie, who was standing frozen near the head table, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what happens next," Trent said. "But I do know this. The truth matters. And pretending someone doesn't exist, that's not love. That's erasure." He set the microphone down and walked toward Rowena. The room was dead silent. Trent stopped in front of her, his eyes red-rimmed. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Rowena stood slowly, tears running down her cheeks, and nodded. "Thank you." And then he turned to me. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm sorry." I couldn't speak. I just pulled him into my arms and held him while he cried. Behind us, Callie let out a choked sob and ran toward the exit. Robinson followed her, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. The wedding continued, but everything had changed. You know that moment when everything you've been holding inside for years finally breaks free? When the truth you've been carrying like a stone in your chest suddenly lifts and you can breathe again? That's what it felt like watching my son walk away from the microphone and toward me. That's what it felt like hearing him say those 2 words I'd been waiting 6 years to hear. "I'm sorry." But here's the thing about apologies. They don't erase what happened. They don't magically rewind time and undo the pain. They're just the first step. And as I held Trent in my arms while he cried into my shoulder, I realized that this wasn't the ending. It was barely even the beginning of something new. The reception hall had gone eerily quiet. Guests stood frozen, drinks halfway to their lips, conversations suspended mid-sentence. The band had stopped playing. Even the catering staff had paused in the kitchen doorway, watching the scene unfold like it was something out of a movie. Callie was gone. She'd run toward the exit the moment Trent finished speaking, her white silk dress trailing behind her like a flag of surrender. Robinson had followed her, his face a mixture of rage and humiliation, the kind of expression a man wears when he realizes he's been made a fool of in front of everyone who matters to him. And Rowena, quiet, dignified Rowena, stood beside me with tears streaming down her face, finally seen after more than a decade of being invisible. I pulled back from Trent and looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes were red and swollen. His face was pale. He looked younger than he had in years, like the polished, confident man he'd become had cracked open to reveal the uncertain boy underneath. "I didn't know, Mom," he whispered. "I swear I didn't know." "I know you didn't," I said softly, reaching up to touch his cheek. She made sure of that. He glanced over at Rowena, then back at me. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. His eyes widened. "Why didn't you tell me?" I took a breath. This was the question I'd been preparing for. "Because if I had told you, you wouldn't have believed me. You would have thought I was being bitter, jealous, the scorned ex-wife trying to ruin your family, and Callie would have spun it into something that made me look unstable and her look like the victim. So I did the only thing I could do. I brought the truth to you, and I let it speak for itself." Trent closed his eyes, his jaw trembling. "I've been such an idiot." "No," I said firmly. "You've been manipulated. There's a difference." He shook his head, tears spilling over again. "I let her push you out. I let her make you feel like you didn't matter. I sat there and watched her treat you like you were nothing, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to cause problems. I didn't want to make things uncomfortable." He let out a bitter laugh. "God, Mom, I'm so sorry." "I know," I said again, "and we'll get through this. But right now, there's someone else who needs to hear that." I turned toward Rowena, who was standing a few feet away, her hands clasped in front of her like she wasn't sure whether she belonged here or not. Trent followed my gaze, then slowly walked toward her. He stopped in front of her, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other, this woman who had been erased, and this young man who was only just learning she existed. "I don't know what to say," Trent finally said, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to make up for what she did to you, or what I didn't do." Rowena's expression softened. "You didn't know. That's not your fault." "But I should have asked questions," Trent said. "I should have wondered why she never talked about her family, why there were no photos, no stories, no history. I should have seen the red flags." Rowena reached out and gently touched his arm. "We see what we want to see, especially when someone we trust is telling us what to believe. Your stepmother is very good at that." "She's a liar," Trent said bitterly. "Yes," Rowena agreed. "But she's also my sister, and I spent a long time hating her for what she did. But hate is exhausting, so I let it go. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace." Trent stared at her, and I could see something shift in his expression. Respect, admiration, maybe even the beginning of understanding. "Will you stay?" he asked suddenly. "For the rest of the reception? I know this isn't how anyone expected today to go, but I'd like you to stay, if you're comfortable." Rowena glanced at me, then back at Trent. A small, sad smile touched her lips. "I'd like that." The reception didn't return to normal. How could it? But slowly, tentatively, people began to move again. Conversations resumed, though they were quieter now, laced with curiosity and speculation. The band started playing again, a soft instrumental piece that filled the awkward silence. Trent's bride, sweet, confused Emily, appeared at his side, her hand slipping into his. She'd been standing near the head table the entire time, watching everything unfold with wide, uncertain eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked him gently. Trent shook his head. "Not really, but I will be." She looked at me, then at Rowena, her expression cautious but kind. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea any of this was happening. Callie seemed so perfect," I offered. Emily nodded, looking embarrassed. "Yeah. Perfection is usually a mask," I said, "and masks always slip eventually." Emily bit her lip, then turned to Rowena. "I'm Emily, Trent's wife, and I'm really sorry for what Callie did to you. That wasn't right." Rowena smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." For the next hour, something unexpected happened. Guests, curious, sympathetic, or simply desperate to know the full story, began approaching our table, not to judge, not to gawk, but to listen, to ask questions, to acknowledge Rowena in a way she hadn't been acknowledged in over a decade. An older woman, who turned out to be Trent's great-aunt, sat down beside Rowena and asked about her mother, about the years she'd spent caring for her. A cousin asked about her life now, where she lived, what she did. Even some of Robinson's colleagues, people who had no reason to care, stopped by to express quiet support. And with every conversation, I watched Rowena come back to life, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the way a flower unfolds when it finally gets sunlight. She laughed, she cried, she told stories, she existed, and that, I realized, was the real revenge, not humiliation, not destruction, just existence. Just refusing to stay erased. Robinson and Callie didn't come back. I found out later, through Trent, that they'd gone straight to their car. Callie had been sobbing, hysterical, insisting that Rowena was lying, that I had orchestrated the whole thing to destroy her. Robinson, to his credit, hadn't bought it. He'd demanded the truth. And when Callie couldn't give him a straight answer, when she kept deflecting and blaming and spinning excuses, he'd finally seen what I'd seen years ago. She wasn't the victim. She was the architect of her own perfect lie. They didn't divorce, at least not immediately. But something between them broke that day. Trent told me later that his father had moved into the guest room, that Callie had started seeing a therapist, that their house, once filled with polished smiles and surface-level harmony, had become cold and tense. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel vindicated either. I just felt tired and relieved, like I'd been holding my breath underwater for 6 years and had finally been allowed to come up for air. As the evening wore on and the reception began winding down, Trent found me again. I was sitting at the table, no longer by the service station. He'd insisted I move to a seat closer to the center, talking quietly with Rowena about everything and nothing. He pulled up a chair and sat down across from us, his tie loosened, his jacket draped over his arm. He looked exhausted, but there was something lighter in his eyes now, something clearer. "Mom," he said, "can we talk? Just the two of us?" I nodded and stood, squeezing Rowena's hand before following Trent out onto a quiet balcony overlooking the gardens. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, almost painfully so. Trent leaned against the railing and stared out at the horizon for a long moment before speaking. "I need you to know something," he finally said. "I need you to know that I see it now, all of it. The way Callie pushed you out, the way Dad let it happen, the way I went along with it because it was easier than questioning anything." He turned to look at me, his eyes wet. "I was a coward, Mom. I chose comfort over you, and I'll never forgive myself for that." "Trent, no, let me finish." He took a shaky breath. "You didn't deserve any of this. You didn't deserve to be treated like an afterthought in my life. You didn't deserve to be seated by the service station at my wedding like you were some distant relative I barely knew. And you definitely didn't deserve to have to bring a stranger to your own son's wedding just to prove a point." "She's not a stranger anymore," I said softly. Trent smiled sadly. "No, she's not. And that's because of you. You gave her something no one else could. You gave her a voice. You gave her a place at the table. Literally." I felt my throat tighten. I gave her what I needed too. A witness. Someone who couldn't be dismissed or ignored. "You're brilliant," Trent said, shaking his head, "and I'm an idiot for not seeing it sooner." I reached out and took his hand. "You see it now. That's what matters." He squeezed my hand, and for a moment we just stood there in silence, watching the sun dip below the trees. "What happens now?" he asked eventually. "Now?" I repeated. "Now you live your life. You love your wife, you build a family, and you make sure that the people who matter to you never feel invisible. Because that's the real lesson here, Trent. Not that Callie is a liar, not that your father chose the wrong woman, but that people, real people, deserve to be seen. And when you erase someone, you don't just hurt them. You lose a piece of your own humanity." Trent nodded slowly, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I won't forget that." "Good," I said. because I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not staying quiet anymore. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Rowena. Dear Marla, I've been thinking about what to say to you since the wedding, and I realized that thank you doesn't feel like enough. You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever have again, my voice, my story, my right to exist in a space where I'd been erased. I won't pretend that seeing Callie didn't hurt. It did. It brought back every painful memory, every betrayal, every moment I felt like I didn't matter. But it also reminded me that I survived, that I'm still here, and that no matter how hard she tried to erase me, she couldn't. I've decided to reach out to a few other family members, cousins, aunts, people who believed Callie's lies about me. I don't know if they'll listen. I don't know if they'll care. But I'm going to try, because you showed me that silence isn't safety. It's just another way of disappearing. Thank you for refusing to let me disappear. With gratitude and hope, Rowena, I read that letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. And then I called her. We talked for 2 hours, about everything, about nothing, about the lives we'd lived and the futures we were building. And somewhere in that conversation, I realized something. I'd spent 6 years feeling invisible, feeling erased, feeling like I didn't matter. But I was wrong. I mattered. I always had. I just needed to stop waiting for permission to take up space. Trent and I had coffee the following Sunday, just the 2 of us. No Callie, no Robinson, no distractions. We talked about everything we'd been avoiding for years, the divorce, the distance, the hurt. And slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding what had been broken. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real, and that was enough. He told me that things with Callie and his father were still tense. That Callie had admitted to lying about Rowena but insisted she'd done it to protect herself. That Robinson was struggling to reconcile the woman he thought he married with the woman she actually was. Do you think they'll stay together? I asked. Trent shrugged. I don't know. Part of me hopes they don't, but that's not my decision to make. No, I agreed. It's not. What about you? He asked. Are you okay? Really? I thought about it. Was I okay? I'd spent years being pushed to the margins. I'd been humiliated, dismissed, and erased, but I'd also fought back. I'd refused to stay silent. I'd brought the truth into the light. And I'd won. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the way that mattered most. I'd reclaimed my voice, my place, my son. Yeah, I said, smiling. I'm okay. Sometimes revenge isn't about burning everything to the ground. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just about refusing to disappear, about bringing the truth into the room and letting it sit down beside you, about reminding the people who tried to erase you that you're still here, still standing, still matter. Callie tried to make me invisible. She tried to erase me from my son's life, from his wedding, from his world. But the truth is loud, even when it whispers. And that day, the day I sat beside Rowena in that corner by the service station, the truth didn't just whisper. It walked in, it sat down, and it refused to leave. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by someone you trusted? Have you ever been pushed to the side, dismissed, or erased? And if you have, what did you do about it? Did you stay silent, or did you find your voice? Because here's what I learned. Silence doesn't protect you. It just makes you smaller. And you were never meant to be small. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or unimportant, I want you to do something for me. I want you to leave a comment below and tell me your story. Tell me about a time you refused to stay invisible, or tell me about a time you wish you had. Because your story matters, your voice matters, and I want to hear it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's been erased, dismissed, or pushed to the margins, share this video with them. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know that the truth is always worth speaking, even when it's hard. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe if you want more stories about people who refuse to stay silent, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might change the way you see the world. I'm Marla, and I'm done being invisible. Thanks for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.